The winter morning arrived with heavy silence as snow covered the small village completely. The houses stood still like frozen shadows while cold wind moved slowly through empty paths. Most people stayed inside their homes because the weather was harsh and unforgiving. Only one small girl stepped outside that morning with careful feet and steady breath. Her name was Mina, and she was sent by her grandmother to collect dry wood from near the old storage shed. Mina wrapped her thin shawl tightly and walked forward without complaint. She had learned early that winter did not wait for anyone. As Mina walked near the edge of the village, she felt something strange in the air. The wind carried a soft sound that did not belong to snow or trees. It was weak and broken like a breath asking for help. Mina stopped walking and listened carefully. The sound came again, faint but real. Her heart began to beat faster as she followed the noise toward a broken fence covered in ice. Behind it she saw a dark shape pressed into the snow. At first she thought it was just debris, but then it moved slightly. Mina stepped closer, and her eyes widened in shock. A mother dog lay there frozen and thin with her body curved around several tiny pups. The snow had covered parts of her fur, and her legs barely moved. Her breathing was slow and shallow like she was fighting to stay alive. The pups were pressed close to her stomach and made weak sounds as they searched for warmth. Their eyes were closed and their bodies trembled in the cold. Mina felt fear rise inside her, but she did not run away. She knelt slowly and watched the scene in silence. The mother dog lifted her head just a little and looked at Mina. There was no anger in her eyes, and no warning sound came from her mouth. Instead there was exhaustion and quiet hope. Mina felt tears form as she realized the dog had stayed there through the storm just to keep her pups alive. The cold had taken her strength, but not her care. Mina remembered all the warnings she had heard about stray animals. She remembered being told to stay away and not touch them. But none of those words felt right at that moment. Mina took off her shawl and gently placed it over the pups to block the wind. The mother dog did not move and did not resist. She only watched Mina closely. Mina then ran to the shed and pulled out an old wooden box that once held tools. She dragged it through the snow with all her strength until it reached the dog. She lined the box with dry grass and her coat. One by one she carefully lifted the pups and placed them inside. They were so light it felt like holding air. Her hands shook from cold and fear, but she did not stop. The hardest part came when Mina tried to move the mother dog. The dog was weak and heavy, and Mina was small. Mina wrapped the dog in a piece of cloth she found near the shed and pulled slowly. She slipped more than once and fell into the snow, but she stood back up every time. The dog stayed calm and silent through it all. Step by step Mina pulled the box and the dog toward her house. Her legs burned and her breath came out in short clouds, but she refused to give up. When Mina finally reached her house, her hands were numb and her face was red from cold. She opened the door and warm air touched her skin. Inside the small room the fire burned softly. Mina placed the box near the fire and laid the mother dog beside it. She rushed to get warm water and clean cloth. She wiped the snow from the dog's fur and covered her gently. The pups slowly began to move more as the warmth returned to their bodies. Their weak sounds grew slightly stronger, and Mina felt hope rise in her chest. The mother dog slowly closed her eyes as warmth reached her again. It was not the sleep of surrender, but the rest of someone who finally felt safe. Mina sat beside them and watched carefully. She was afraid to sleep because she feared something might go wrong. She fed the pups warm milk drop by drop using a small spoon. Each tiny movement felt like a victory. Outside the storm continued, but inside the room life fought back. As night came, Mina stayed awake listening to the crackle of fire and the gentle breathing of the dog and her pups. She spoke softly, even though the dog could not understand words. She promised they were safe now and that she would not let anything happen to them. The mother dog opened her eyes once more and looked at Mina. In that look was something deeper than instinct. It was gratitude mixed with trust. It was a silent bond forming between two souls who had found each other in the cold. Mina did not know that night that this choice would change her life. She only knew that she had done what felt right. The storm outside slowly weakened and the snow stopped falling. Inside the small house, a quiet miracle had begun. The mother dog had been saved, but she had also chosen Mina. What the dog would later do for her would shock everyone who heard the story. But for now the night held its breath as trust settled between a little girl and a frozen mother dog. Morning light entered the small house softly as the fire burned low and steady. Mina woke up slowly with her body stiff from sitting on the floor all night. She rubbed her eyes and looked first toward the wooden box. The pups were moving now with small sounds that felt stronger than before. Their bodies pressed close together and their tiny breaths rose and fell in a calm rhythm. Mina felt relief wash over her heart as she realized they had survived the night. The mother dog lifted her head when Mina moved closer. Her eyes were clearer now and no longer dull with pain. She tried to stand, but her legs trembled and gave way. Mina placed her hand gently near the dog without touching at first. The dog did not pull away. She leaned slightly closer and rested her head on the floor. Mina understood that healing would take time and she felt ready to give it. Mina prepared warm food using what little they had. She poured milk into a bowl and soaked bread until it softened. She fed the mother dog slowly and patiently. The dog ate carefully and did not rush. Every movement showed trust. The pups were fed again with careful drops and they slept soon after. Mina smiled quietly as she watched them rest in warmth. When Mina's grandmother entered the room, she stopped in shock. She had not expected to see a dog and pups near the fire. Her first reaction was fear and worry. She asked Mina why she brought them inside and warned her of danger. Mina listened but did not argue. She only explained what she had seen in the snow and how the dog was close to death. Her voice was calm but firm. Her grandmother looked at the dog again and noticed how weak she was. After a long pause, the grandmother sighed and sat down. She saw the way the dog watched Mina without fear. She saw the pups sleeping peacefully. Something softened in her heart. She agreed to let them stay for a while. She reminded Mina that care meant responsibility. Mina nodded with serious eyes. She understood and accepted that promise. Over the next days the house changed. The fire burned longer and Mina spent her time cleaning and feeding the dog and pups. She named the mother dog Luma and the smallest pup Nori. The others had not yet earned names. Luma grew stronger slowly. She began to stand longer and walk short distances. Her tail moved gently whenever Mina entered the room. The bond between them grew without words. One afternoon Mina slipped while carrying water outside. She fell hard on the icy ground and cried out. Luma heard the sound and rushed to the door. Though still weak, she ran outside and stood between Mina and the open path. She barked loudly toward the empty road, as if warning unseen danger. Mina looked up confused but felt safer with Luma standing there. Luma then turned and gently touched Mina's hand with her nose. As weeks passed, the pups opened their eyes and began to explore. They followed Mina everywhere with clumsy steps. Luma watched closely but did not interfere. She trusted Mina completely. People in the village began to notice the dog and her pups. Some were curious and some were doubtful. A few warned Mina again to be careful. Mina only smiled and continued caring for them. One evening a strange noise came from outside the village. It was sharp and sudden and made people uneasy. Mina was alone at home gathering wood when she heard it. Luma reacted instantly. Her body stiffened and her ears pointed forward. She stood between Mina and the door. Her growl was low and serious. Mina froze, not knowing what was happening. The noise came closer and shadows moved beyond the window. Mina felt fear rise, but she trusted Luma. Luma stepped outside bravely and barked loud and strong. The noise stopped suddenly. Moments later footsteps ran away into the darkness. Luma returned slowly and stood beside Mina. Her body relaxed only when she saw Mina safe. Mina realized then that Luma was not just recovering. She was protecting. That night Mina hugged Luma gently for the first time. Luma stayed still and allowed it. Her eyes closed, and her breathing was calm. The pups slept nearby, unaware of what had just happened. Mina understood something important in that moment. She had saved Luma from the cold. Now Luma was saving her from fear. Their lives were tied together. The next morning the village spoke of strange movement near the paths. People were cautious and stayed alert. Mina stayed close to Luma all day. Luma followed her like a shadow. Wherever Mina went, Luma stood watch. It became clear that Luma sensed danger before anyone else. The grandmother noticed it too and began to respect the dog deeply. As days turned into weeks, Luma regained full strength. Her coat grew thicker and her eyes shone with life. The pups grew playful and strong. The house that once felt quiet now felt alive. Luma never left Mina's side. She waited by the door when Mina slept and walked with her whenever she went out. The village slowly accepted them. Children played near the pups and adults nodded respectfully at Luma. But Mina felt something deeper coming. She sensed that Luma was more than grateful. She was devoted. Something unseen was guiding her actions. Something that went beyond instinct. One cold evening, as Mina stood near the edge of the village watching the sky darken, Luma suddenly froze. Her ears lifted and her body tensed. She let out a sharp bark and grabbed Mina's sleeve, gently pulling her back. Seconds later, a large piece of ice fell from a roof and shattered where Mina had been standing. Mina's heart raced as she realized what could have happened. She looked at Luma in shock. Luma stood calm and steady, as if she had known all along. Mina knelt and wrapped her arms around Luma tightly. Tears filled her eyes, but her heart felt full. She whispered thanks, though words were not needed. What the dog had done was not chance. It was not luck. It was loyalty born from survival and trust. The frozen mother dog Mina had rescued was now watching over her every step. And this was only the beginning of what Luma would do when the real test arrived. The winter slowly began to loosen its grip on the village as days grew longer and the snow melted into thin streams. Mina walked more often outside now, and Luma followed her closely every time. The bond between them had grown strong and steady, like something unbreakable. Wherever Mina went, Luma stayed alert and calm, as if her eyes saw more than others. The pups were bigger now and playful, but Luma never lost focus when Mina was near. One afternoon, Mina was sent by her grandmother to deliver bread to a nearby house beyond the small hill. The path was narrow and wet from melting snow. Mina walked carefully with the basket in her hands. Luma stayed beside her with her head low and ears moving. The air felt quiet in a strange way, and even the birds were silent. Mina felt uneasy but continued walking. As they reached the hill, Luma suddenly stopped. Her body stiffened and she stepped in front of Mina, blocking the path. She growled low and steady without fear. Mina looked ahead and saw nothing at first. Then she noticed movement behind the trees. A shadow shifted quickly and disappeared. Mina's heart began to race and she took a step back. Luma barked loudly, breaking the silence. The sound echoed, and moments later footsteps rushed away. Mina stood frozen as Luma stayed firm until the noise was gone. Only then did Luma relax and return to Mina's side. Mina realized how close danger had been without showing itself fully. She placed her hand on Luma's back and felt strength beneath her fur. They turned back toward home without delivering the bread. When they reached the village, Mina explained everything to her grandmother. The older woman listened carefully, and her face grew serious. She warned Mina not to walk alone beyond the hill again. Word spread quickly, and the villagers became more cautious. Many began to notice how Luma always reacted before trouble came. Some whispered that the dog had special sense. Others simply nodded with respect. That night, a strong storm returned without warning. The wind howled and rain hit the roofs hard. Mina stayed inside close to the fire with Luma lying near her feet. The pups slept quietly in the corner. Suddenly Luma lifted her head sharply. Her ears pointed toward the door and her body tensed. Mina felt fear rise again. Before Mina could speak, Luma ran to the door and barked loudly. The sound was sharp and urgent. The grandmother rushed to Mina's side and pulled her back. Moments later the door shook as something hit it hard. The sound was followed by heavy footsteps moving around the house. Luma barked again, louder than before, and stood firm at the door. The noise continued for a short time, then stopped suddenly. Silence followed except for the rain. Luma did not relax. She stood guard for a long while before slowly stepping back. The grandmother locked the door tighter and whispered thanks. Mina hugged herself, trying to calm her breathing. She looked at Luma with awe and gratitude. The next morning the villagers gathered to talk. Some houses showed signs of forced doors and scattered items. No one was harmed, but fear spread quickly. People realized how close they had come to worse trouble. When they heard how Luma had warned Mina, they began to see her differently. The frozen dog from the storm had become a protector. Days later Mina and her grandmother were asked to stay with relatives for safety. Mina agreed reluctantly but insisted Luma come too. They traveled by cart across uneven roads. Luma stayed alert the entire way. At one sharp turn the cart slipped on mud and tipped dangerously. Luma jumped forward and barked loudly, causing the driver to stop just in time. The cart steadied and disaster was avoided. The driver stared at Luma in disbelief. He shook his head slowly and spoke of luck. Mina knew better. She felt it deep in her heart. Luma had sensed the danger again. The grandmother placed her hand on Luma's head with respect and gratitude. At the relative's house Mina stayed indoors most of the time. Luma rested near the door, always watching. The pups grew curious and playful, filling the house with life. One afternoon Mina wandered into the backyard while Luma followed. Mina slipped on wet ground and fell near a deep ditch. She cried out in surprise. Before she could move, Luma rushed forward and stood between Mina and the edge. She nudged Mina back gently using her body. Mina crawled away safely and sat trembling. Luma stayed close until Mina stood again. Mina hugged Luma tightly with tears falling. She whispered words of thanks though her voice shook. The relatives watched everything from the doorway. They exchanged looks of amazement. They had never seen such devotion from an animal. Luma had not only saved Mina once but again and again. It was no longer coincidence. It was loyalty rooted in gratitude and love. That evening Mina sat beside Luma watching the sunset. The sky glowed softly and the air felt calm. Mina thought about the day she found Luma frozen in the snow. She remembered the fear and doubt she had felt. She realized how one choice had shaped everything that followed. Luma rested her head on Mina's leg quietly. Mina understood that Luma would always protect her as long as she lived. But she also sensed something heavier ahead. Life had a way of testing bonds. Something greater than storms or shadows was coming. Luma seemed to feel it too as she stayed alert even in peace. The frozen mother dog had become more than a guardian. She had become family. And when the greatest moment arrived, it would show the world just how powerful that bond truly was. Spring arrived quietly and gently washed away the last signs of winter. Flowers appeared along the paths and the air felt lighter with every passing day. Mina had returned to her village with her grandmother after things settled. Luma walked beside Mina proudly with calm confidence. The pups followed closely, now strong and full of life. The village felt different than before, as if something unseen had changed. One afternoon Mina was sent to fetch herbs near the riverbank. The water was high from melting snow and moved fast. Luma followed as always with steady focus. The sky was clear and nothing felt wrong at first. Mina knelt near the water and reached for the plants carefully. Luma suddenly barked sharply and rushed forward. The ground beneath Mina shifted and crumbled. She slipped and fell into the river with a loud splash. The cold water pulled her fast and her basket floated away. Mina tried to stand, but the current was strong. Panic filled her chest and her voice failed to call for help. Luma ran along the riverbank, matching Mina's movement. Without hesitation, Luma jumped into the water. The force pushed her under, but she fought through it with all her strength. She reached Mina and grabbed her clothing firmly. Using powerful strokes, Luma pulled Mina toward a shallow edge. The current fought them both, but Luma did not let go. With one final push, she dragged Mina onto the muddy shore. Mina lay coughing and shaking but alive. Luma stood over her, breathing heavily. Her body trembled from exhaustion, but her eyes stayed focused on Mina. Villagers heard the noise and ran toward the river. They froze at the sight before them. A mother dog, soaked and tired, stood guarding a small girl pulled from danger. Mina slowly sat up and wrapped her arms around Luma tightly. Tears flowed freely as relief and gratitude filled her heart. The villagers gathered and helped them return home. Word of what happened spread quickly through the village. Everyone spoke of Luma with awe and respect. The dog Mina had saved from the snow had saved her life in return. From that day, Luma was no longer seen as just a stray. She became a symbol of loyalty and courage. Children greeted her with smiles and adults offered food and shelter. Mina stayed close to Luma and the pups. The bond between them felt deeper than words. Time passed, and the pups grew into strong young dogs. Some families asked to adopt them, but Mina chose carefully. She wanted them to be safe and loved. Luma watched every choice closely. She trusted Mina completely and accepted each farewell calmly. One evening as the sun set, Mina sat beside Luma near the old shed where everything had begun. The grass had grown over the frozen ground from before. Mina remembered that first day clearly. She remembered the fear and the cold and the choice she made. She realized how one act of kindness had shaped so many lives. Luma rested her head in Mina's lap quietly. Her body showed signs of age now, but her presence remained strong. Mina spoke softly, telling Luma she would always be grateful. Luma looked up and licked Mina's hand gently. It was enough. Years later, the story of Mina and Luma was still told in the village. People spoke of the frozen mother dog and the little girl who refused to walk away. They spoke of loyalty stronger than fear and kindness stronger than cold. Mina grew older but never forgot the lesson she learned. She learned that saving a life could change your own. She learned that gratitude could turn into devotion. And she learned that sometimes the unbelievable is born from the simplest act of care. Luma lived her life surrounded by warmth and love. When her time finally came, she rested peacefully with Mina beside her. There was no fear, only calm trust. Mina held her gently and thanked her for every moment. The river still flowed and winters still came. But the village never forgot what happened. The frozen mother dog did something unbelievable, not because she was special, but because she was loved.